Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today, we're going to be talking about the newest album, the comeback album, Sol Invictus, from Faith No More. It almost seems like a theme this year, and albums by artists that have been long beloved by a cult following, disappeared after albums of critical acclaim, and now have come back to varying success. Come to think of it, off the top of my head, we've got Sleater-Kinney, Cannibal Ox, the pop group, and one of now the most famous alternative metal acts ever, Faith No More. One of the most complex and wildly diverse acts that break through in the late 80s and early 90s. Yep, turns out in the middle of hair metal oversaturation, one of metal's most odd groups is pushing experimentation on the outskirts of mainstream appeal, dropping a couple critically acclaimed records before sputtering out to disband in the mid-90s, cycling through ideas almost as quickly as they went through guitarists. But now they're back after 18 years. And to discuss all this further, I decided to call up a longtime fan of the group and previous guest on Spectrum Pulse. Folks, say hello to Myke C-Town from Dead End Hip Hop, and he and I are going to be talking about Faith No More's comeback record, Sol Invictus. And we have with us today Myke C-Town from Dead End Hip Hop. Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for inviting me, dude.
Yeah, I heard now, I saw a little bit on Twitter, you're a massive Faith No More fan. You got into them probably a lot before I ever did. What's your story there?
Story with me and Faith No More. I got into them in high school. The metal kids in high school were the only kids that would actually hang out with me. So one of them, my friend Jeff, he was a huge Faith No More fan. So he introduced me to them, Metallica, Guns N' Roses, a bunch of other shit. And Faith No More was that one band that really stuck. And I've just been a fan ever since.
Yeah, I think I got into them a little bit later. I got into them in university through basically a massive compilation pack of pretty much all 80s underground stuff. And it was a weird pack, too. You ran into stuff, you got stuff from varied as R.E.M., The Cure, The Jam. Then you had stuff going all over to Susie and the Banshees, Sisters of Mercy, XTC. Then you had stuff like Jesus and the Mary Chain, Echo and the Bunnymen. Like, it was all over the place. And on that album was Faith No More's We Care A Lot. Which, okay, I kind of like the song for what it is, and I kind of appreciate it for it, but I found by the time that Faith No More got into Introduce Yourself, and especially later on Angel Dust, that they just came together as a band a lot more. They got a lot more of that experimental edge into their sound, and they just got to be in one of those alternative metal bands I could really like and respect. What would you think is your favorite album from them?
My favorite album by them is definitely Angel Dust. I'm not sure if that's a consensus, if that's like a fan favorite, but I just don't see how it possibly couldn't be. That album is it's varied and it's polished and it's so different. It's awesome.
Yeah, and I would completely agree with you there. What do you think is their weakest album?
Probably Album of the Year, even though I don't think it's a bad record. But it would have to be tied between Album of the Year and, well, no, I'll go with Album of the Year. The very first album, the one with a different singer, I can't remember the name of it now. But I don't really listen to that album very often, but it's not bad. But Album of the Year, I never listened to.
The funny thing is, like, I would agree with you there in terms of the first album and Album of the Year were probably the ones I find they're weakest. Believe it or not, I actually like that previous singer. I forget his name off the top of my head. But when he was on Introduce Yourself, I actually kind of liked his voice a fair bit on that album. It kind of fits with that production, especially with that guitar tone. It just really worked for me on Introduce Yourself, which is probably, honestly, maybe my second favorite album from them.
All right, well, that works.
So coming into Sol Invictus, 18 years after we had last time we had a Faith No More record, did you expect this to be good?
Nope. I did not expect it to be good. I was hoping it would be good, but every time one of my favorite bands gets back together and does an album after a big chunk of time, I have very low expectations. You know, I had low expectations for the Carcass album, the last one, Surgical Steel, and I was blown away. I still love that album. I had relatively low expectations for the last At the Gates record, and I was beyond let down even by my lowest expectations. So I didn't know if this would be good or not. I was hoping it would be, but, you know, I was expecting the worst.
And we were in the sort of the case this year where we had a whole slew of comeback records. I mean, we had Sleater-Kinney, which was fantastic. I really loved that album. Going back to It's Only Gotten Better in my eyes. On the other hand, we had that Cannibal Ox album, which was sad. I really, like, you know what, going back to it, it has been completely forgettable. It didn't enter into my memory at all, and that just makes me really sad about that. And midway between, we had the pop group, which I think only Anthony Fantano really loves, but that happens when you have old bands coming back.
Wait, what's the pop group that Fantano loves?
That pop group is this post-punk group. They dropped two albums in 79 and 80. One of them was Why, one of them was, I forget the name of the other one, but they were massively influential to back when Nick Cave was still in his birthday party days.
Oh, they're called the pop group.
Yeah, the pop group, that's what they're called.
I've never heard of them.
They're actually, as this weird blend of post-punk, dub, and some elements of funk, actually ridiculously interesting stuff. Then they came back this year, an album called Citizen Zombie. I like one song off of it like consistently in my rotation, but outside of that, wasn't really clicking with me.
That's a bad sign.
Yeah, and I kind of see a lot of that with more post-punk coming back somewhat closer to the mainstream this year. Like, I mean, we had Savages from 2 years ago, and now we get the Lower Dens album that dropped earlier this year that I thought was fucking spectacular. That's more of on the post-punk synth-pop side. But moving away from that, let's talk about Faith No More. Sol Invictus, did you like it?
I loved it. I think it definitely lived up to what I wanted. It's dark, it's weird, it's crazy, it's progressive, and whenever I listen to it, I always think how it's really interesting and amazing how that band can make music 18 years ago, break up, then come back and still make something that is completely different than what anyone else is making or could make. And I love the album, man, start to finish.
The funny thing with that is that I found is that you come back to this and it's got a defiantly Faith No More sound. Like, you can look at Faith No More, they're pretty much the only ones who have stuck to making that sound consistently, and even despite all their change-ups, and even despite the fact that the band's a massive contradiction when it comes to lyrical tone and instrumental tone on some tracks. Look at Sunny Side Up, for instance, on there. But it's amazing how cohesive they can still make a project, even with that much varying style.
Yeah, them and Tool are probably the only bands I can think of that really have that knack for having their own sound completely. Like, when you listen to just the first 3 songs on the album, all 3 of those songs are massively different. But at the end of the day, every single one of them sounds like Faith No More.
Completely. And now, there's been a lot of change. Even with that, there has been some changes since earlier Faith No More days, particularly in terms of the guitarist. Now, I thought his playing was solid on the sound, but I think the tone of his guitar, I don't know, it didn't have the same prominence and meat to it, or enough jangling texture that previous Faith No More guitarists have. Would you agree there, or?
The only issue I had with the guitar is the guitar work itself was great. Yeah. The guitars were not thick enough. They, I don't need it to be super heavy, but like on the first song, or the second song, Superhero, that riff is just so driving and powerful, but I don't feel like the guitar had enough punch.
Now, do you think that's an issue of the tone the guitarist chose, or do you think that's more of a production issue?
I have no idea, man. I really can't tell with those guys. If this was another band, I would probably pick one or the other based on the entire album as a whole, but Faith No More, who knows? They could have totally decided they wanted it to sound like that.
Yeah, I would kind of agree with you there, because, and that's the other thing, like, this album is distinctly not as funky or as some of the stuff that I've liked with Faith No More in the past. They've got some of those funk elements on, like Separation Anxiety. You go back to Kona Shame, it's got some of the stuff too. The Rise to the Fall, it's got elements of it, even though that song's got more of that carnival vibe with some of the keyboards in the back that I actually really liked. But I guess when it comes to, I think they're probably going to be drifting away from some of that. Although the one thing that did strike me about this record, and this is probably a comparison I think only I'm going to make, you go back and listen to some of the way some of the keyboards underscore some of the melodies, it's so strikingly reminiscent of Jack White's last album, Lazaretto. It just was that more of that gothic theatrical vibe.
Yeah, and that could be a reflection of all of the other shit that Mike Patton's been doing. I know the other guys have done stuff as well, but Mike Patton is the one that's been in like 12 other bands. So, you know, that could definitely be one of the elements that he brought back to the table when they decided to start writing this record.
Yeah, and I would agree with you there. So in terms of speaking of Mike Patton, like, and that's the one thing I actually found most of his vocals on this album to be pretty solid in terms of I like his deeper range. I like he can legitimately sound sinister. You can tell when he's kind of winking at the camera, which shows a lot of charisma. I guess the one thing that kind of bugs me a little bit is he brings some of that sniveling element to his voice, or he goes into his upper range, which isn't as strong. But then again, he's a versatile vocalist. I'll give him that.
With that, I think that Mike Patton is a great vocalist, but I think when he does certain things, I don't think he's going for a strong voice. He's just going for, this is fucking creepy, or this is different, this is weird. That's the only thing that I kind of wish there was more of. I wish there was more of Mike Patton doing crazy, weird vocals. And I know this is not a Phantomist record. This isn't one of the other various projects that he does, so he's not expected to do those type of vocals, but one of my favorite songs from their past couple albums, the one that's on King for a Day, Fool for a Lifetime, there's a song called, I think it's called Don't Look at Me, I'm Ugly in the Morning. I think it's just called Ugly in the Morning, actually.
Yeah.
But there's a part in it where he's freaking out, and you can see in the studio that he's probably freaking the fuck out. There's the part where he's like, don't look at me, I'm ugly in the morning. And he just keeps doing this over and over again. I was really hoping that there would be more of that Mike Patton on here, but there's kind of not. He's pulled back a little bit.
I kind of agree with you there. This album, when it comes to the dramatic freakouts, you would think that he would have incorporated more of the styles that he had brought back from previous acts into this. Like, I guess that's where a lot of critics have spoken out on this particular case. They're like, Faith No More's been gone for so long, you would think that they would come back with a sound that would be more experimental and weird, given the stuff that they have done on the side for the past 18 years.
Yeah, but again, I think that it's just a matter of he's done so many projects that he just wanted this to be about Faith No More. And this sounds like a Faith No More album. I think if they had put too much experimentation into this album, then it just wouldn't be a Faith No More album. It would be an amalgamation of all of Mike Patton's projects. Which, I mean, who really wants that?
Yeah, that is kind of true. Okay, so when it comes to songs on this album, which ones really stuck out to you? Which ones really drove you?
Immediately the first song was just, I love that kind of soulful, and the lyrics are fucking amazing. But then when it gets into Superhero, I just started getting hyped. Where it, go, 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 go. And then when the riff comes in, it's just awesome. But again, I do wish the guitars were a little bit thicker, especially on that song. Cone of Shame, I really, really, really liked the heavier sound and the vocal work that he does on that song. I like to peel your face off so I can see what you really think. I think that shit is great. And Motherfucker is probably my favorite song on this album. And funny, that's the first song that I heard from this album, but sonically, it's exactly what I expect from Faith No More. You know, it's such a loud and hard and triumphant song, and the concept of the song is something that I really, really like. The whole thing about overconsumption of people in the U.S., relating people to foie gras, being stuffed with garbage until we're full of random shit, until we turn around and produce stuff right back for our masters. I really, really, really love that concept. And that's another thing about these lyrics. These lyrics are Faith No More. Like, nobody writes like Mike Patton.
And I would completely agree with you there. In terms of the songwriting on this record, I honestly think the songwriting is one of the stronger points. Even though the more I think about it, there's some songs that feel a little outside of the bounds of what I would expect from them. Like, well, Sunny Side Up, for instance, is a classic. To me feels like classic Faith No More in terms of taking something that's so, I wouldn't say inane. It's a song about breakfast that makes references to cartoon cereal characters, which I absolutely thought was freaking amazing. And yet they were able to subvert it to make it sound like it sounds almost sinister. And I can love the way it was balanced there. But when you look at thematically the album as a whole, you look thematically at the album as a whole, how it's basically taking a look at what we have as our idols, what we take as our basic what we as a society worship, and then we come back to it, and it's basically tearing those away. You see this in the Brought Into the Sun on Sol Invictus, where we look to the sun to give us energy and light, and yet it burns us away. You look to superheroes, where we idolize superheroes, especially in today's day and age, and they are not proven, and they'll get back in your cage. They get back to define our idols the way we want them to. Which I honestly kind of looked at that. I'm like, you know what? If they put this in a Captain America movie, I would have laughed my ass off.
Yeah, I think only you would think of something like that. That's hilarious.
Now, and coming back to the whole thing with Motherfucker, it ties back to a similar theme on, Black Friday. And I'm like, you know what? There'd be some jackass who works at whatever HMVs are left in this country, and basically, I'm going to put this on Black Friday and see who gets it.
And Black Friday was actually the only song that I wasn't super into. It wasn't a bad song. It just, I don't feel like it held the weight of the other ones. The whole buy it just didn't do it for me.
You know what? I like the song a little bit more, mostly because the acoustic riff reminded me so much of a Metric song that I really like, Gold Guns Girls. But here's the thing. I find it hilarious that, I liked actually Black Friday, but then you go to the acoustic ending track, the closer, From the Dead, which I could not stand. I know it's supposed to be about the band coming out of the ashes, but to me that song just felt so corny.
That song is very hokey, but I still love it. Let the Dead Live. I love it. I love that song. I thought it was a great closer.
Now, the one song that I'm actually curious about, what do you think of that? The longest track on the album was Matador. And I think Matador was a perplexing track in that it was placed on the album. I wasn't a fan of it exactly compositionally. I found the riff, you started on the riff on the piano and you eventually graduated it to the guitars. Just felt a little bit basic for me considering what Faith No More could do. What do you think?
I think the song was a bit long, but I still like that song, and I thought it had great lyrics too. I mean, Rising Like a Matador. I didn't think it was as adventurous as it could have been, but yeah, I still thought it was a good song.
And I would agree with you there. So we're now coming into, in terms of songs that the song I didn't like probably the most was From the Dead, and the songs I loved were Sunny Side Up, Cone of Shame. I gone back and re-listened to Separation Anxiety, and holy shit, that song holds up well. That bass line is so good. And I like Black Friday and that sort of thing. So overall, I thought this was a pretty damn solid record, and clear you loved it. So let's throw the question out. Should Faith No More continue making albums?
I honestly don't know. I'm still trying to figure that one out. Because I definitely think this album is better than Album of the Year, and I think it holds up pretty well against the other albums in their discography. Now, can they do another one? I don't know, man. I really don't know. I hope they do make another album. I wouldn't be against it, but I would just be heartbroken if the next album sucked.
And I would kind of agree with you there. I get the feeling is that if Faith No More were trying to put out an album to reestablish that they've got a presence in the mainstream, or in rock and metal again, I think they proved that with Sol Invictus. I think it's gotten a good reception from people. I don't know if it's selling anything, but in terms of, I'm happy that they're back, and I get the feeling that I honestly kind of want to see them make another album. I want to see them get a little bit more adventurous again, because I got the feeling with this record, they were well within their capacity to do so.
Yep, I actually agree with you, man. I do want them, yeah, you're right. I would like them to do another album and just make it a little bit more freak-out-ish.
Yeah, push that boundary a little bit further. Sort of reminding me when Nick Cave went and did Grinder Man.
Right. Yeah.
I'd love to see that. So, yeah, overall, I think this turned out well. Where can they find you, Myke?
If you want to find me, you can go to MykeSeatown.com. That has links to everything I'm involved in. That's my own personal channel, as well as Dead in Hip Hop. It's got my Twitter. I think it's got Facebook, all that good shit. That's the best place to go.
Yeah, and, well, once again, Myke, thanks a lot for coming on the show. I really appreciate your in-depth knowledge of the band. I really appreciate that we actually have a good conversation about a band we actually like.
Absolutely, man, and thanks a lot for inviting me. We'll have to do this again.
All right, cheers. So, yeah, he and I, a little bit of varying opinions. He liked it a little bit more than I do, but That happens. Now for me, it's a solid 7 out of 10, but definitely a recommendation if you're a fan of Faith No More like Myke is, or you're just looking for some good rough edge, yet still having plenty of hooks alternative metal acts. Because honestly, this album's pretty kick-ass. So check it out. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. If there's anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, or anything else coming out that you want me to take a look at, I'd be more than happy to give a listen. Seriously, y'all, you should go check out Myke Seatown's channel. He puts out lots of great reviews, both talking about offbeat hip-hop, a couple times he talks about metal, and he's got his What You Want to Know series where he just talks about general life in general. In any case, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.